Okay, so let's all welcome Nick, Alex, and Tuur Demeester. Let's give a big round of applause, please. Sit here, yeah, more comfortable. Yeah, and Armando also. Okay, so we have quite a broad topic here. We're going to be talking geopolitics and financial markets. And as an intro, I want to say that I've been doing a Spanish podcast since 2018. And in 2020, at the beginning, I recorded a podcast with somebody from banking. And we were talking what kind of economic agents are already in Bitcoin. And at that time, there was no big public company in Bitcoin. There was not a big company that showed a big interest like MicroStrategy did that same year at the end. There was no countries. And all that sounded, when we were talking in that podcast, it sounded like science fiction, like utopia. It will come, but it will come in a very future. So 2020 MicroStrategy, 2021 El Salvador, now we know about Bhutan. There is some other countries holding Bitcoin, but also now we know that Trump has if he wins, he has a Bitcoin plan. So that escalated very fast. I didn't expect that. And I want to know your opinion. I want to know what are your thoughts on where are we going in nation states adoption from now on. What are your thoughts on that with Bitcoin?
Well, yeah, it's good for the price. Price goes up, you know, big companies buy it, price goes up. But we can't lose sight of what Bitcoin was made for. It was made for individual liberty. I came from the liberty movement. I came from politics. And that's the reason why I'm in Bitcoin. And I think that we're losing focus by saying, oh, now we're justified. BlackRock's in Bitcoin, but they're just trying to sell you some garbage derivative or some type of way that they can control Bitcoin. But the reality is we have to keep it ourselves. And I think into the future, what's going to happen is the CBDCs are going to come out, the central bank digital currencies, and they're going to try to train us like with dolphin, and they're going to give us let us eat if we do what they want with our own money. So everyone's going to try to migrate the Bitcoin or privacy layer over Bitcoin or something. And I think that's going to be the future, personally speaking. I don't know how long I can yap on this, but I can yap on it all day. The reality is it's up to us to usher in the incredible, inevitable future after we understand why Bitcoin was created and what our job is. Our job is to have self-sovereignty and control ourselves and our own money because the CBDC is coming and the future might look bright, but they're not aligned with us. They're not aligned with the people.
Yeah, for now, I think one area to focus on is mining, as you mentioned. Hard to say what politicians are going to do with Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of speculation. Look, Trump may have a plan, but the last thing Trump did when he was in office was try to go after self-hosted wallets, self-custody. So let's not forget that. So let's be a little careful here. We don't know what he would do, right? A lot of dictators are trying to have it both ways. They're trying to maybe think about maybe mining Bitcoin, but then preventing their citizens from using it as payments. So, you know, to what Nick just said, it's true. We have to keep focusing on the grassroots adoption. But what I would just say is it's interesting that we are now in the age of nation-state mining, for sure. So Ethiopia and Kenya are two very large countries with almost 200 million people combined, and those governments are mining Bitcoin, like straight up with a public-private partnership with companies like Marathon. That's also happening in different parts of South America, different parts of South Asia. That's going to just increase in time. And you know, when politicians learn that they have all this stranded energy, whether it be hydro or geothermal or nuclear baseload that doesn't match demand all the time, or whether they learn that their solar or wind projects, you know, have all this energy output that's never used, and they don't have battery technology good enough to hold it, they're going to learn that Bitcoin network will buy 100% of whatever's not used by the grid or by industry. And they're going to learn that a company will come and pay them to set everything up. They don't have to pay anything. So, and then they'll get income in Bitcoin that they can then use to buy things on international markets. So that era is about to happen. And I think regardless of what happens with payments and custody and laws around Bitcoin as a currency, the mining part is absolutely inevitable.
And as far as I understood, already happening, no, Alex? As far as I understood, it's happening already, starting to happen.
Yeah, so Kenya has signed a deal with Marathon, and they're converting excess energy off a giant hydro plant to Bitcoin. And they're going to do it with geothermal. And once countries realize that they can turn their stranded energy resources into capital, they're going to do this, and they're going to do it aggressively. It's going to take time, maybe another 5 to 10 years for them to fully understand this, but it's a better alternative than, right now, if a government wants basically to raise new capital or free up capital, they have to cut spending somewhere, they have to raise taxes, or if they borrow from abroad or from the public. And they don't really want to do any of those things, so right now they just inflate the currency. But turning to the ability to unlock your stranded energy, which every country has, no matter how poor, even the poorest countries are energy rich in this way. I think it'll unlock a whole new era. So I'm very excited about that, regardless of what happens with payments and regulation around your use as a currency.
Tuur, what kind of new relations do you see between Bitcoin and these kind of actors happening?
Well, I think in general, talking about adoption, nation state adoption, I think the big picture is that over the last 15 years, Bitcoin has been attracting the finest human capital in the world, like the smartest people, the people with the most long-term vision. And this is becoming a fairly large group of people. And now that we're on the cusp of mass adoption, and Bitcoin really making a dent financially also in the big economic pie, I think the race is on for nation states to welcome this human capital within their borders, and they're going to have to be creative. We've seen that with Bukele trying to do that, and other nations are going to follow. So that's kind of from our point of view, what we have to offer to the world is like the smartest human capital, and we can bring our financial capital with us and put it to work if you earn our trust, right? I think that's the bottom line. And then from the point of view of, well, which countries is that going to come from? It's been very hard to predict, and I think that's because it really depends on a few individuals that really make the difference. And so we don't really know which is the next country where a brave person is going to stand up, whose message resonates with the people at large, and who then also gets political power to make things happen. Or of course, there's also been Bitcoin people from native to Bitcoin who have been just in talks with existing governments. So all that is happening. And so I think it's a race, it's a race, and whoever comes in early is going to benefit from this for decades to come. And yeah, there are going to be countries that are hostile towards Bitcoin, for sure. We'll see where that lands. I think Europe is at risk of being very hostile to Bitcoin. Latin America has a lot more going for it, because you guys have been financially assassinated for the last 50 years with inflation. So you guys know that, and I think politicians as well, they know that the time is ripe for something new. And I think that the USA is kind of in an uncomfortable position because they have been, the empire of the world, and they have been master of the reserve currency of the world. And so now it's time for a big decision. Like, it's kind of like, what do we do with Bitcoin? And if they choose against Bitcoin, it will literally kill the empire. I believe that. If they really consistently go against Bitcoin, they would just lose their leadership position in the world. And if they choose for Bitcoin, it will be the beginning of an exciting period, and a lot of countries will partner with the US. But that's kind of like how I see the big picture.
So if we saw the mining race, here what I see is a jurisdiction, like a country arbitrage that is happening depending on what's their attitude towards Bitcoin.
Yeah, and governments need to understand that, we Bitcoiners, we think in the long term. So we are not only looking for a comfortable place to live for a year and not be taxed for a year. We want a place where we can raise a family. We want a place where there's rule of law. We want a place where it looks bright for the next few generations as well. So we want institutional deep thinking and rethinking, because the physics, the law of physics of a fiat system is fundamentally different from a sound money system. And so we need people in government to be willing to rethink institutions, not turn them upside down, but to have intelligent reform that's in line with long-term thinking.
Armando, what's your take on the next phase we're entering?
So I think Bitcoin is the most transformative system, tech system, the world has ever seen. So with that being said, everybody will have to accept it. It's not going to be a choice. It just depends on when they accept it, right? Is that the countries that accept it the fastest will benefit the greatest. Eventually with enough time, and I'm not clear on the time scale or the time frame, but every country in the world will have to accept it. So what the key thing here is that we have to be careful with, and I agree with your point on regulation, and Bitcoin was created to be transparent. It was created with individual rights in mind. And what's happening now is that these gatekeepers like MicroStrategy, like BlackRock, and governments are now becoming the gatekeepers and removing that power that Bitcoin had in the first place. And we have to remember that the internet itself was created to be decentralized and free. It's not that anymore. That's one of the first decentralized, really, technologies ever created. And it's not free anymore. You can't say what you want. You'll lose your account because players like Instagram, like social media, are now the gatekeepers. So they control it. So I believe that eventually everybody's going to be on it. Everybody's going to have to use Bitcoin. I think countries, and I agree with you on your point about energy-rich countries. My family is from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., but it's poor in relation to the rest of the United States. And they're rich in solar, and they're rich with almost 98% sunshine per day, per year, I mean. And also they're rich in wind power, which is one of the most powerful, renewable sources that we have access to. Countries like Puerto Rico and in Latin America benefit greatly from mining Bitcoin, and hopefully a lot of countries see that, as fast as possible, and it will make a lot of things more equal, on a worldwide scale.
I want to go back to Nick, because Nick, I fully agree with what you said. If we lose the basics of Bitcoin, we're lost. There is no point in Bitcoin if we don't self-custody, if we don't use it as sovereign users. But you were mentioning before that you have maybe some experience, for example, with countries in the Middle East. And this is something I've seen the last 2 years, that they, again, started to be very interested in mining. And when we talk about Middle East, we talk about kingdoms, that are deciding everything there. So what do you think is going to be happening there towards Bitcoin?
Well, I want to say something about mining. I'm not too happy with governments getting into mining. I'm not too happy with all these public companies getting into mining. All the private companies, many of them have to sell, after the halving, and the price didn't go up the way they thought yet. So all of a sudden, these governments and these big companies, public companies, are the miners. Well, they're going to whitelist wallets that they're going to accept, pull from the mempool from, and only push those on the blockchain, on the blocks, and only allow those transactions. That's the biggest fear I have when governments get involved in mining. They're going to say, well, only our wallets, or the ETF wallets, all the financial institutions' wallets, and you guys aren't allowed to have any private keys. And I'm telling you this from experience, because back in the height of COVID 2020, a friend of mine called me and said that the UCC, the Universal Law Commission, put out a new UCC, which is the laws between the 50 states' commerce, and they said that people weren't allowed to have, I'm going to paraphrase it, that people weren't allowed to have a private key, only financial institutions. So I paid a whole bunch of money to hire the sleaziest lobbyists I could find, and we destroyed that. And no one really heard about it because I try to keep my head down with what I'm doing. So, but we destroyed it, and no one knew anything. So I know that they have their eye on the private keys, which means pretty soon, the governments are mining, so only the financial institutions' transactions we're going to pull out of the mempool and put into the blocks. Only public companies, right? These are regulated or regulators that are going to be mining. So you should not really be too happy about that. And I think that, Bitcoin started peer-to-peer, and my gamble peer-to-peer Bitcoin at some level is where it's going to end up. My friend has a company, noones.com. It's a peer-to-peer marketplace. He brought Bitcoin to the global south and Africa and everything. And I think that's going to be the actual last stand for Bitcoin. I really believe it. I've seen the future. I built a computer in 1978 with a soldering iron. No one even knew what a computer was. I built No More Hotels and Get a Room in 95, first Airbnb in 95. I built, what the hell was it called? Livery Cab, which was before the smartphone, was the first Uber. I built the first live cryptocurrency exchange in 2013 right next door to the stock market because I'm a political person. And the reason why I did that is because I see the future, and I'm seeing this future, that the CBDC is going to come and it's going to turn you into a dog, and you're going to have to sit and give the government paw so you can eat. Or if you speak to me, you're going to have to go through retrain your brain.ai, or else you're not going to be able to eat. And if someone talks to you, they're not going to be able to eat. So if you think it's just privacy, the CBDC, if you think it's about privacy, it's not. They are going to control the population of the world. I put a lot of politicians in office. Whoever really wants to be a politician that bad is pretty much a scumbag, all right? And I put a lot of them in office myself, and I was pretty stupid at the time. But these people want to control you. They're going to control you. They're controlling you right now. I'm sorry. I'm rambling on. I can't stop. I can't stop.
Okay, so, but there is something to comment here because we talk about this. Alex, you want to say something? Because I see you.
Yeah, in a way, that is the threat, right? So 3 years ago, Quillette asked me to write an essay about how governments would stop Bitcoin. And basically, what I was saying at the time was they're not going to do some sort of sci-fi attack you're not going to do a 51% attack. They're not going to try to kill Bitcoin. They're going to try to co-opt Bitcoin, right? So they are going to try and have, the two Bitcoin problem, where you'd have, again, Bitcoin that is, whitelisted and KYC'd versus free black market Bitcoin, and they're going to try to make using black market Bitcoin illegal, or et cetera. And that's always the great fear, right? So
OFAC list. Your wallet's going to be on the OFAC list, and you're going to get 20 years in jail.
Yeah, or you're on the China version of that, or whatever. So the point is that one of the most important things we can do today to prevent that from happening is investing in non-KYC global Bitcoin infrastructure. Very, very important. And the mining thing is interesting. I think there's some interesting incentives there. The one thing that may prevent what you just described from happening is the fact that the US and other very rich advanced countries, et cetera, are going to be pouring all of their electricity resources into AI. And AI, they cannot outsource the data farms because it's national security. They want it in their borders. And AI is not very price sensitive to the cost of electricity. Bitcoin mining is very cost sensitive. So what's interesting is what you're going to see happening is more mining happening outside of the US, outside of Europe. So if we can establish software in the pools where the miners can actually control and select transactions, then we can kill the very real threat that you've just described. So whether it be Stratum V2 with demand pool, which is being worked on here in South America, which is sensational. It really brings the power back to the miners to allow them to select transactions to kill off this idea that the pools can censor, or whether it be braid pool or other systems. That's another area that's absolutely critical for us to focus on. Is basically block template construction and making sure that's in the hands of as many people as possible and not in the hands of a few.
Yeah. I wanna say that it's amazing, this panel, because the topic is about talking geopolitics, but I love that we went back to the grassroots of Bitcoin and saying, yeah, because of geopolitics, we will have to be stronger, for example, in block template generation, not more decentralized. So thank you to get here because I love it. But I want to introduce another second topic. Aside of geopolitics, there is financial agents. No, we have FMI. You know it very good, Alex. And these kind of big agents, the banks of the world, are also starting to accept that Bitcoin is a huge threat, a big reality. At the beginning they were ignoring, but now it's on the table and they cannot ignore anymore. And I want to ask you, what's the next phase, not in geopolitics, but in the relationship with these big financial actors or financial markets? What's your take on this, Tuur?
Yeah, Well, I think we're getting into the stage of the counter-reformation, basically. So we have Bitcoin, which is kind of protesting the existing system, and then eventually you get a reaction. And so far, the reaction has been more an attempt to minimize Bitcoin. We just, you know, they invented all kinds of words. They used cryptocurrency, digital currency, blockchain, digital assets, any word to not use the word Bitcoin over the past 14 years in all these academic papers and the research. And now finally we're seeing Bitcoin is mentioned, Bitcoin is attacked, Bitcoiners are being accused of stealing value from other people because Bitcoin appreciates and the rest stays behind. So, you know, this is really the beginning of the counter-reformation. There's a big reaction coming from these three-letter agencies and international institutions. For me, the big picture about that is to always remember that even though we have to stay humble, that bureaucrats are just not as efficient as entrepreneurs are. If you look, for example, at oil companies that existed in Venezuela, after they were nationalized, and you see this in research every time, their productivity drops by 50%, right? Literally. So for example, if a government were to take over a Bitcoin mine, it's going to become, by definition, much, much less efficient. So I always keep that in mind when people have, you know, have fears about, oh, the government will come in. It's like, yeah, but they will do a terrible job. And Bitcoin has high standards. Like, you know, there's no cheating Bitcoin. You either do the work or you don't get the reward. So to me, it's really, you know, yes, they are Goliath, but we are David, and our slingshot works really well. And there's really a lot that can be done with ingenuity. And I think that by making sure that we remember to keep having these conversations about why Bitcoin matters, try to understand Bitcoin, and then we'll be able to focus our creativity because we are simply better skilled than they are. We really are. It's about focus and it's about dedication.
When we talk about, there is these phases, no? I don't know exactly how they go, but there is the first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, or I don't know which goes first, and then they fight you, no? And then they build monuments on your name. Are we in the fighting phase, you think?
Yeah, there was a tweet I put out a long time ago. As a Bitcoiner, first they call you, first they call you an idiot, then they say you're lucky, and then they say you owe me, right? And this is the stage. Like, okay. oh, you're rich, now you owe me, right? That's happening. Yes. So they are attacking us. And of course they don't have a logical argument. You know, they just do projection. They're accusing us of fraud and theft. Like, no, that's what you do by printing money. But so yeah, I mean, they're basically showing that raw force is what they want to use, and we will continue to be non-violent and defend ourselves as best we can as cypherpunks.
Armando, how does Bitcoin fit in this, together with these big agencies, big financial actors in the future?
So in the Roman Empire, whenever the politicians wanted to control the people, all they said was the barbarians are at the gate. And people would give up their personal rights and everything just to get over that feeling of fear, and then the government would do whatever they wanted. So the big fear about cryptocurrency, and it's been going on for a while, is that the government or those in authority use fear to control us. What they'll say is that Bitcoin's dangerous. It's crime ridden. They use it for drugs. They use it for pedophilia and stuff. And people get scared and look for an authority to save them, like MicroStrategy, or like BlackRock, or like the government. And then that gives them more and more control. And that's what's happened with the internet. That's what happened with almost every technology that could have changed so many lives, is that they use fear. So it's up to us as people who are savvy to make sure we fight back against that. If not, I believe that Bitcoin will go the way of regulation, because I think that the average passive person, in the United States at least, looks for a central authority to tell them what to do. They don't trust Bitcoin unless somebody like Bank of America or BlackRock tells them that it's okay and you can buy it through me, through my financial products, through my ETFs or whatever, and they take a cut, of course. So that's the biggest fear right now, is that or the biggest threat is that we're going to lose control over Bitcoin. We're at the phase right now where it's like do or die. They're going to take it and run with it, or we can fight back and we can control it. We can control the future. And I agree with you. Bureaucrats and politicians are horrible at regulating, really regulating or moving forward technology. They're horrible at it. They have no incentive, really. They're not good. They're good at being politicians. A politician is like a popularity contest. That's what their key skills are. It's not at managing or technology or anything else. So if we're not careful, they're going to take it, they're going to run with it, and it's going to slow down progress, it's going to slow down adoption, and we're going to lose control. So it's very important that we stay on top of this and make sure that we fight back.
Alex, if we talk about FMI, you are the one that knows it better. How are they going to react? So what's going to happen?
Well, I think it's important to note that the only way the IMF, which is the world's largest international lending institution set up in 1944 to be the lender of last resort for the world economy, ever since the early 1970s, it's pivoted its mission to essentially creating a debt trap for the global majority countries, and it has $1 trillion in outstanding debt today. And the way that it achieves what it does is through what I call the currency caste system. So there's 180 fiat currencies, and there's a handful at the top that are like actually money, meaning you can leave your country with it and you can buy something somewhere else with it. And other central banks save in this currency. I mean, it's basically the dollar, the euro, and a handful of other currencies. So only 1 billion people live in countries that issue reserve currencies. The other 7 billion live under basically arcade token currencies that if you leave the casino, they're worthless. Like if you grow up in Argentina or Ghana and you take your money to Germany, it's completely useless. So this is so important for the IMF because what they do to enforce control is they lend money to a government, usually an anti-democratic government, and they say you need to do these conditions in order to take this money, which is dollar denominated, by the way, and the local government cannot pay it back in its local currency. It has to get dollars to pay back the debt. So that's the debt trap. And what they do is they say you have to devalue the currency. So the only way the IMF can really work and to impose structural adjustment, which has happened so often here in Argentina, is because there is its unique fiat currency here that is weaker. If you had one global neutral standard for currency, you can't do structural adjustment. You could do other things. You could ask them to cut fiscal or raise taxes, but then the people are going to protest against that. The quiet way to oppress is through inflation. It's the quietest way to do it. People still notice, but it's the easy way out. What we're going to do with Bitcoin is take away that big red button. And I think that, yes, we need to focus on non-KYC infrastructure and decentralizing mining. These are really important. But ultimately, if this thing was going to be successful, yeah, banks were going to buy it. Yeah, governments were going to get involved. It was always going to happen that way. There was no way we could have Bitcoin win and it only be for like cypherpunks on the internet. It was never going to happen. So I think we need to, continue to invest where we can on peer-to-peer use and self-custodial use, and let's be skeptical. But you got to realize if this thing's going to win, everybody's going to use it. So we just have to keep that in mind.
I think that Bukele had dollars. He didn't have his own central bank. That's why it was so easy for him to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. So the IMF, from what I know about the IMF, is that I was an advanced man for many years, and I would take these delegations from other countries, and they'd have meetings all over Washington, but they're really just waiting for the call from the IMF, and they don't care who they're having a meeting with. When they get the call from the IMF, they run over there, and they cut the deal. And the deal is they get a slush fund to pay off their parliamentary members to pass these crazy laws before they get the big loan that they can never pay off. So these laws lately are things that you would cringe at. And also, like in Kenya just now, which I just came back from, they had where the farmers' land deeds in the bill that they were going to pass. Lucky they didn't pass it. There was so many demonstrations that went out after we put together the Pan-African Trade Summit. Thank you very much. Thank you. What they did was if you have land, they take your deed and turn it into a lease, a 100-year lease. That was in the law that was going to get passed, and no one even knew it. That's how these politicians who are trained from a very young age to accept money, because when they're presidents of their universities, they get like $3 or $5 a head to bring people from their college to an event. So they're trained from very young to take money. So they all take money because that's how they're trained. And then they all fall in line with the IMF loan, and then their country's fucked. So, like he said, that's the IMF. We've been fighting the IMF from Seattle back in 90, right before the Twin Towers went down. Been fighting the Federal Reserve with Audit the Fed. We had the bill with Ron Paul. We did End the Fed movement. He wrote the book, and we protested all over the place, chased down our politicians with a camera and asked them why wouldn't they vote to audit the Fed. And the Fed is part of that system, because if they didn't have the fake money, they couldn't do any of this, right? They're printing shit coin and they're controlling the world with some fucking shit coin. Wouldn't you like to do that, shit coiners? And then I was going to answer one thing, but I forgot. Anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talking about IMF and so on, I want to jump into another
It was
topic.
Ray Youssef spearheaded, with no one, spearheaded a lot of, I don't want to say what, but when we were in Kenya, all this stuff happened.
So I wanted to ask you, Tuur, we were talking yesterday about something that Bitcoin can start having a lot of presence, that is derivatives. And I wanted to ask you if you could expand on that, because this is something that we can see way more economic agents jumping into Bitcoin thanks to them.
Yeah, so, I mean, really, we're retooling the entire world's financial system is what's happening. And so that means that you had a need not only for cash, but also for other financial instruments. Obviously equity, which is like, but you can store equity in different ways. And then also derivatives. And this is something that there's a lot of confusion about. And then also for me, it was very opaque for a long time. Like, what is this derivatives thing? It's basically their bets. Like I think this is going to happen. You think the opposite is going to happen. We make a bet. And
that's what I was going to say. Gold. Look at gold. They control the price of gold. They control the price of silver. They're going to control the price of Bitcoin. Okay. You're talking that this is a good thing? What are you, nuts?
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So basically, they're just bets, right? And the question is like, and so what people do with bets is, if they happen in a structured way, is they help you protect yourself from certain risks. Like an airline company, they will take bets to hedge against the oil price from going up a lot. So it basically protects the stability of their operations. And what you saw right now, for example, the largest derivatives market in the world is the interest rate derivatives market. It's by far the largest. And in the past, it was agriculture, and then it was oil. And so I believe Bitcoin is going to become the largest derivatives market in the world over time, because it'll allow businesses to orient themselves to live in a world where Bitcoin exists and all its volatility. And
price
so,
down, to keep the price down.
I do hear
they're going to artificially control the price, like
way,
they do gold and silver.
Just for the record, like, I don't work for any financial institution. Like,
you look like you do.
Yeah. Point
I'm
taken.
sorry.
Touche. And I was in the gold world before. I went to the 2011 GATA Gold Conference and like.
Explain, how do they control the price of gold? Explain it to the people.
Sure. The issue is if you have a commodity that is difficult to audit, to observe, and that is not transparent, then you can play games with derivatives that influence the price. And I agree that some things like that has happened with gold, because, for example, the gold in Fort Knox, I believe the last time they audited it was 1953, and it's not a transparent operation. Whereas Bitcoin is completely transparent, and everybody in this room can audit the Bitcoin blockchain and can audit a Bitcoin bank if they are showing you the balance, right? So that's why I don't think the tail of the derivatives will ever really wag the dog of Bitcoin. I think we have more protection, but of course we have to be vigilant, of course.
It's funny about Fort Knox. I think like 6 people have been in Fort Knox since like the 80s. It's like a very low number. I don't think the gold's there, but that's my personal opinion. But I also wanted to touch on derivatives. Now, I agree with you in the spirit of Bitcoin being transparent, all that stuff. But I also agree with him on derivatives. And this is derivatives can make an asset go up or down. It's not all down. And remember, the stock market is 70% derivatives. 70% of all capital in the United States stock market is derivatives. That means like options, futures, and other types of bets on certain assets. So, and what that does is it decreases volatility. Now, the average person will not invest in Bitcoin if it's up and down as much as it is. The average person can't deal with that kind of stress. Up or down, it doesn't matter because they're forced to make a decision. That's why the best asset classes long-term for the masses are ones that have low volatility but go up and to the right. That's what people want to see. The average 401k worker does not want to wake up and see their account up 30% or down 30%. They just want a consistent gain. So I believe that derivatives can help Bitcoin. We could get a wider adoption. There is a risk that it can be manipulated through derivatives, but I think that it's a good choice for Bitcoin going forward, and I think I believe in that. So
I believe that the good part of Bitcoin is that if you don't trust it, you can always self-custody it, and then you have the proof, like proof of reserves. You can do it yourself. So I think that's what's gonna be different from what we have seen in the market. We have 4 minutes left, so I believe that unless you want to say something else, Alex, no. I believe we have time for 1 or 2 questions on this topic. Okay.
Aloha. My question for you is this. What is the ideal situation for the success of Bitcoin that represents hyper-Bitcoinization on this planet? And how does that look? Like, can you paint that image?
Good one.
So what would it look like if hyper-Bitcoinization happens and is a success and is positive? You want to go first? Yeah.
Well, in my utopian perspective would be everyone would trade peer-to-peer like it was designed and opt out of all the shitcoin fiat currency and just opt out. If everyone opted out of the system and all the fake pieces of paper that they say has some kind of value or some shit, then we wouldn't have any trouble. But, people are stupid and people like to do what they used to do and they can't reach out. But you know what? It's happening. Africa, just like they jumped past the copper wire and they all went to cell phones, they all went to the internet real fast, they jumped past everything else and it's going peer-to-peer Bitcoin. I mean, if you check out that site, noones.com, these guys are trading like crazy, all kinds, because what happened was you can't send money country to country in Africa. They charge like 20-30%, but you can send it to Europe for like almost nothing, or you can send it to the States. So then they have M-Pesa. So you say, what, that's the technology? Then they had M-Pesa, and it's in 8 countries, but you can't send to another country. So he said, oh, we'll use Bitcoin. So Binance, when they arrested CZ, they put a U.S. overseer on the company, and the first fucking thing they did, listen close, is they banned peer-to-peer, intra-Africa peer-to-peer trading with each other. What the heck is that? They're busted. So we have to trade peer-to-peer using Bitcoin, have self-custody, and trade peer-to-peer today and opt out of everything else. If no one wants their toilet paper, if no one wants their paper, what the hell are they going to do with it? They got it. They're coming over to Bitcoin because all their clients want Bitcoin now. Imagine if each and every one of us stayed away from these financial institutions, forgot about all that shit that they used to do, and believed in the math that God gave us that runs Bitcoin, math, and not a bunch of back smoke-filled rooms of assholes. Because my father told me, Tirio de Ñines and Tirio de Entros, a beast. You'll never become unless you eat beasts. The central bank digital currency is a beast. These printing and money printing companies are beasts. BlackRock is a beast. We have to eat beasts to become beasts and have our reality. Like we're set here in the image of God. Stand up.
Yeah, my vision is pretty simple. One open neutral currency for the world. No more structural adjustment. No more currency caste system. Doesn't fix everything, but it would be a much, much, much better place.
I would say if I try to imagine what a hyper-Bitcoinized world looks like, I really think it's basically just sound money. Like really, there's going to be some nice features about it that are unique, that have not happened before, but a lot of it is going to be sound money, which means we can look in the past, we can study history up until the 19th century, and we can learn a lot. And in terms of reviving and rebooting some institutions that have gone lost. And I think one of the things that you also find if you look in history is the role of strong individuals. And I just want to point out, because we're talking geopolitics and we're in Argentina, like, I don't know if all you guys have an idea of how unique it is that you elected Milei. Like, God damn it. Like, in the last 50 years, there has not been somebody like this, I believe, in the world. And so there are people who are classical liberals that were my teachers, that I look up to, who have not seen that. And of course, people say, oh, but we have to wait for the result and this and that. It's like, no, it's already there in the campaign. It's already there with the courage that was shown and with the people that rose up. It's amazing. You guys should be so proud of yourselves. It's amazing.
I want to say one more thing. Now, in the next 10 years, more technological change is going to happen in all of human history. Our lives will be completely different from here to 10 years from now. And I want to touch on your point. Bitcoin hyperization will happen in an exponential growth curve. One day he will be on a stage like this talking about it. Within 3 to 5 years, it will be integrated in every system and it will be everywhere. That's why it's important to stay on top of it, to get knowledge, and make sure you're ready for that change.
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you very much. It was an amazing panel, and viva la libertad, carajo.